Zeophates, oxygen not included, tutorials, tips, and tricks. And welcome everybody to another tutorial with Zeophate. Today we're going to go over oxygen. How do you get it? What do you do with it? And we're also going to touch on polluted oxygen and carbon dioxide. Well, there's a couple of different ways you can get oxygen. First way, which is out in the world, and you will encounter out in the world, is oxalate. Let's see, actually. Right there. Once exposed to an open tile, like, well, just let's say air, this will start, well, basically it'll start vaporizing itself and releasing oxygen. That is going to be the very first source of oxygen you encounter. Problem is, once you run out, you run out. Next source of oxygen is oxygen diffusers. This is going to take power, you are going to feed it algae, and it's going to give off oxygen. Simple, straightforward, easy. Downside is, you can run out of algae. And if that happens, problem's going to happen. Next is a sublation station. This station is going to take polluted dirt and turn it into polluted oxygen. So if you're in a swamp biome or whatever like that, you need some air and you don't have algae around, there's a way to do it. So I'll touch on the next bit here. Deodorizers. Deodorizers take power and sand, and they will consume polluted oxygen and transform it into oxygen. And every now and then it'll drop some clay. So if you have a lot of polluted oxygen in your base, start chucking deodorizers around, and that'll clear up your polluted oxygen problem fairly quickly. Next method is an oxalate sconce. Later on, you will have the ability to produce oxalate. You will also, if you're digging around, probably produce some. Any material like oxalate that is a subliminator. One thing to keep in mind for this stuff is if you've got just a puddle of water like this, and you chuck storage bin in here, you can set this to store your oxalate and everything else like this, and it'll sit there. You can actually also just dump it directly into water, and it will just sit there. It won't subsume, so you can actually store this stuff. Which then you take over, put in that, and it'd go, if you need it. The next source is an electrolyzer. Which is going to be a pain in the ass that wants me to do certain stuff for it. An electrolyzer is going to pull in water. It has to be water. Polluted water and everything else like this will cause damage. Any other liquids will cause damage. It needs to be water. What it'll then do is it will produce oxygen and hydrogen. So it's going to produce 888 grams of oxygen and 112 grams of hydrogen per operation of 1,000 grams of water. So that right there is going to be a major oxygen production. The next thing is we have a rust detoxifier. That's going to take power and salt and, well, rust. And it's going to produce oxygen at 570 grams and chlorine gas. So you're going to want a way to deal with that. Next thing is the algae terrarium. Algae terrariums will produce polluted water and oxygen, but it'll eat carbon dioxide. It's not a lot, but it'll do it. There are some ways to accelerate it to make it work better. One of those ways is just simply having a light source on it. That'll make it work better. I've also seen some people having fresh water just flowing below it, and it seems to automatically suck it in. I never used that system before. I actually honestly don't use these things at all. But they are an option. The last thing is a carbon skimmer. This is not so much going to produce oxygen as it's going to delete CO2. The way this thing works, because CO2 falls to the bottom, is you want to have this thing as low as possible. Because like you can see, the carbon dioxide is gathering up here. You'd want to have that thing sitting down here. You're going to pump water into it, and it's going to eat 300 grams of carbon dioxide. It's going to pump out the same amount of water, but it's going to be polluted water. So you will need to hook it up to a water sieve to cleanse that water. But you can very easily just have the water sieve and that thing set up with a power source. And once you got some water into the pipes, that's all it wrote. Because that's going to be a 1-to-1, and that's going to be a 1-to-1. As long as the system's got power and sand, it's going to run forever. So that's how you can deal with CO2. There are other methods, but we'll get into that in a later video.